Trump didn't just throw a political punch, he lit the match to a firestorm. With the stroke of a pen, he reignited his tariff war, targeting Canadian goods with what he called necessary economic pressure. But what he didn't expect was Canada's response. Mark Carney, calm and composed on the outside, launched a boycott so swift and strategic that American companies began feeling the heat overnight. This isn't just another trade spat, it's a showdown that's rewriting the North American economic order. Before we dive deep into how American giants are imploding and Carney's bold pivot, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss a story that impacts your wallet, your world, and your future. Tariff tremors in Washington. When President Trump unveiled new tariffs on Canadian lumber, beef, and tech imports, he claimed it was a move to protect American jobs. But the announcement sent shockwaves through the markets. U.S. importers weren't prepared. Raw material costs spiked overnight. Construction firms panicked. Home builders in Florida and Texas saw projected budgets skyrocket by millions. Auto plants in Michigan halted shipments, unsure if essential parts would clear customs in time. Behind closed doors, Fortune 500 executives scrambled. Walmart's supply chain team held emergency meetings. Ford's procurement division issued internal memos forecasting major price hikes. And yet, Trump doubled down. If Canada wants a fight, they'll get one, he barked from the podium. But what came next wasn't a fight, it was a dismantling. Industry leaders expected countermeasures, but they underestimated the scope and precision of Canada's response. Within hours, trade lawyers warned that Trump's plan lacked both legal teeth and logistical support. Business lobbyists flooded Capitol Hill, demanding clarity. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce issued a rare public rebuke, warning that tariff retaliation could destabilize American industry faster than we can adapt. Carney's calculated retaliation. While Trump rattled sabers, Mark Carney played chess. The former central banker turned trade architect didn't just retaliate with counter tariffs. He issued a nationwide economic pivot. Effective immediately, Canadian government agencies were instructed to pause all purchases from key American firms, tech, agriculture, pharmaceuticals. This wasn't just symbolic. It was surgical. Microsoft Canada lost 3 major provincial contracts worth over $400 million. Pfizer's vaccine contract renewal in Ottawa was delayed indefinitely. And Deere & Company, a longtime supplier of farm equipment in Saskatchewan, saw orders frozen. But Carney didn't stop there. In a televised address that aired across all provinces, he called on Canadian consumers to support domestic resilience. The message? Buy Canadian. Trust Canadian. And let American giants feel the consequence of economic bullying. It wasn't just a call to arms, it was a national campaign. Billboards popped up overnight in Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto reading, "Build Canada, not Wall Street." Social media hashtags like #BoycottBigAmerica and #MapleFirst exploded across platforms. Even Canadian influencers joined the movement, showcasing local brands and suppliers. What happened next shocked even seasoned economists. U.S. companies in free fall. In less than 72 hours, consumer boycotts swept across Canada. Walmart stores reported a 38% drop in American brand grocery sales. Starbucks saw a 26% decline in daily foot traffic across Ontario and Quebec. Amazon Prime Canada lost over 120,000 subscribers in a single weekend. Shares of Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, and Johnson & Johnson dipped sharply on the Toronto Stock Exchange. U.S. investors, already jittery over inflation and interest rates, now faced a new uncertainty: the Canadian consumer backlash. Industries that depended on cross-border sales took the hardest hit. Harley-Davidson cancelled a Canada Day event in Calgary after sponsors pulled out. McDonald's faced growing calls for "Buy Canadian Burgers" campaigns. And the American auto sector? Let's just say GM Canada's quarterly forecast was quietly slashed behind closed doors. What made the situation worse was how fast the message spread. TikTok videos showcasing Canadian alternatives to U.S. products went viral. A Canadian-made toothpaste brand saw a 600% surge in sales after one influencer's video hit 2 million views in 24 hours. Credit card companies even reported a noticeable shift in spending, fewer purchases at US-based retailers, more with domestic merchants. The backlash wasn't just emotional, it was financial, calculated, and spreading faster than anyone expected. This was no fluke, it was a blueprint. Carney's plan wasn't reactionary. It was crafted long before the tariffs hit. According to a leaked internal document, dubbed Project Independence, Canadian trade strategists had gamed out multiple Trump escalation scenarios. They were ready, and they had a roadmap. The boycott wasn't just emotional. It was economic warfare by design. And perhaps most cleverly, Carney didn't break any formal trade agreements. He simply redirected public and private spending, leveraging market sentiment to do the heavy lifting. Instead of confronting Washington head-on, he let consumer behavior and corporate discomfort do the damage. And while the U.S. Treasury downplayed the impact in public statements, internal emails from commerce officials, leaked by a whistleblower, told a different story. One email read, "If Canada follows through on the boycott, we're in real trouble." Another warned that key defense contracts could be in jeopardy due to shifting supplier preferences north of the border. Too late. They already had. And now, the fallout was rippling far beyond what anyone in D.C. had predicted. China and Europe step in. As U.S. companies scrambled, another unexpected shift took place. Canada began quietly redirecting its strategic partnerships, and it wasn't random. Carney had made quiet visits to Berlin and Beijing in the weeks before the tariffs dropped. Now we know why. Those meetings weren't diplomatic niceties. They were deal-making missions. On Monday, Germany announced a $3.2 billion green tech initiative with Ontario-based firms. 2 days later, China signed a 5-year agricultural import deal with Alberta's wheat and dairy sectors, cutting U.S. farmers entirely out of the picture. China even committed to building processing facilities in Saskatchewan, a direct jab at America's export infrastructure. What's more, France and Japan have expressed interest in Canada's rare earth minerals, used in electric vehicles and advanced manufacturing. Those minerals were once routed through U.S. refiners. Not anymore. The United States had hoped to pressure Canada into submission. Instead, they pushed them straight into the arms of global competitors, some of whom had been looking for a reason to walk away from U.S. influence. American politicians in panic mode. The blowback in Washington was fast and loud. Senators from border states like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota began pushing back hard against Trump's tariffs. "We cannot afford to lose Canada," said one Republican senator in a closed-door meeting. "Our economy depends on this relationship." Their phones were ringing off the hook. Auto manufacturers, farmers, and logistics firms warned of canceled contracts, delayed shipments, and rising costs. Even local chambers of commerce began issuing statements urging restraint and immediate resolution. Even within Trump's inner circle, there were cracks. Some senior advisors warned the president that Carney's boycott could trigger a domino effect, leading other countries to follow suit. "If this becomes a coalition," one staffer warned, "we're not looking at a trade dispute, we're staring at a full-blown economic rebellion." Mexico's foreign ministry issued a cautious statement of solidarity with our Canadian partners. That's diplomatic speak for, "We're watching, and we might act too." Australia and South Korea also began reviewing their U.S. contracts, signaling the early stages of a global shift. Canadian businesses boom. On the flip side, Canadian industries began thriving. Local food brands like Loblaws President's Choice, Canadian Tire, and Tim Hortons reported surging demand as consumers consciously turned inward. Domestic manufacturers were flooded with orders, ramping up production to meet the sudden patriotic surge. Tech startups in Toronto and Vancouver received fresh rounds of venture capital interest, especially from European funds wary of U.S. market volatility and political unpredictability. A renewed sense of national confidence emerged, one that said, "We don't need the U.S. the way they think we do." Carney's vision of a self-sustaining Canada began resonating across industries, campuses, and boardrooms. And suddenly, "Buy Canadian" wasn't just a slogan, it was a movement, echoing through social media, policy speeches, and even local grocery aisles. The bigger picture. This moment is bigger than tariffs or temporary boycotts. It's about global realignment. The United States assumed dominance would always ensure loyalty, that economic pressure would always guarantee submission. But Canada just proved that diplomacy, dignity, and economic discipline can challenge even the loudest superpower, and win quiet victories. The long-term fallout? Expect slower U.S. exports to Canada. Expect higher prices for American consumers as once secure markets shift elsewhere. And expect American companies to start rethinking their dependency on a neighbor they once took for granted, perhaps even resenting. Mark Carney didn't start a war. He set a boundary. And in doing so, he reminded the world that partnership isn't about power, it's about respect, resilience, and readiness for a new world order. So, what do you think? Has Trump's aggressive tariff play finally backfired for good? Or is this just another battle in a long war of economic brinkmanship? Hit the comments below. And if you found this story eye-opening, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next twist in this unfolding economic drama.